Everybody, I'll just move those. Okay, can everyone hear me at the back? Yep, fabulous. Just check the Am I going the right way? Yes. Okay. I'm going to be about 22 minutes last time I timed this, but I do tend to go off on tangents, so I've got some notes here to try and keep me on track. I was last here in 2019, and it's a real pleasure to be back again in 2023. I've been bumped up the order, which I'm eternally grateful to Melissa and team for. Thank you. Today really is a set of reflections, I suppose, on almost 3 decades working in either health communications and certainly over the last 15 years or so, social marketing. Inspired by something I stumbled across while wandering around the southwest of Western Australia, just a little saying of Mother Teresa's, which I will reveal at the end. But really the theme today for me is around thinking big, but going small. I've been a long-time advocate for determinants and structural drivers and the important role that they play in shaping individual behaviour, and we'll really talk to anybody who'll listen about that. But recently I think there's been a bit of a shift, and we are moving much more towards systems again, and I'm just wanting to, I guess, reflect on the import of individual and downstream behavioural interventions as well, and also a little bit of a reflection on my role and maybe our roles as change agents in terms of what role we might expect to have in terms of changing the world. Because I mean, really that's what I set out to do, and I'm guessing a number of you in the room probably sort of are motivated by similar things. You're looking to change one aspect of the world or another in a positive way. So I guess over the last 30 years or so, my thinking around how to do that has changed, and it's evolved over time. Sorry, my clicker's... Can I just go next slide, because I can't seem to get the... Yeah, okay, thanks. All right, so I'm probably just pressing the wrong button, so I'll keep trying. So about 25 years ago now, in the mid-90s, I, like Sarah, interestingly enough, was a journo. So that's what I graduated as. I jumped on a plane and travelled to Bangladesh, where I worked for the best part of 6 months. And I travelled around the country, and really the task was very much about reporting what I saw. And what I saw very much changed my life and changed my direction in terms of career and what I wanted to do. So I was basically tasked with travelling around. I saw a great deal of abject poverty. I was covering natural disaster. I was covering tribal warfare, mutilation, death. And so that was a lot. I spent my 21st birthday there and thought to myself, okay, look, I really need to change the world. We need to do something. And I was probably young enough and naive enough at the time to think that I could. I was going to fix, at the time, the CFCs, and the ozone layer was a big thing. Obviously, world poverty and hunger and just about everything and anything else. So that was the goal 30 years ago. Then, probably about 12 years later, I came to the realisation that I probably bit off a little more than I could chew. And so in London, got a job at the National Social Marketing Centre, actually with Steve. But my job was very much on social determinants. So I was a social marketing advisor on the Strategic Review on Health Inequalities. I did a lot of work with the WHO, and the whole focus was very much around creating systems where people could live, work and play in a healthy way. So it was very much a system-level, structural type approach to creating safe environments for people to live and work. So change the system, that was the mantra for me, back through the mid-noughties, and certainly something that I've banged on about for a long time since returning to Australia in 2012. I chose this photo because I was standing upstream, so I thought it was fairly witty. But that's just my perverse sense of humour. Then, I guess over the last 10 years or so, I've been running the Behaviour Change Collaborative. That's been, I think, a real blessing in many ways, because I've been able to pick and choose the sorts of projects that I work on, and I've been able to work both upstream and looking at systems and doing policy work and a bit of advocacy work, but also I do a lot of community engagement. I do a lot of work in sort of like the downstream individual behavioural side. But what I've also come to realise is that I can't change the world. And I think for me, now what I'm looking to do in my work is see how I can go about changing a single life every day if possible, but really just, I guess, for me and possibly for yourselves as well, the lesson is we can't fix everything, but we can have a really positive impact on a day-to-day basis through what it is that we do. And so for me, that's very much the premise of my work and how I go about my work today. So this is ballpark the number of people sort of sitting and working and playing on the planet, 8.1 billion at this point in time. That's growing at a rate of around about one every second, just over one every second. So it's probably no surprise that when we are thinking about how we go about influencing and affecting so many lives, we do look to systems level approaches increasingly to do so, justifiably so. As I said, I'm sort of very much an advocate for this, but I am of the view that recently we're seeing such a push towards that sort of approach that in some ways I think we are potentially disregarding the import of downstream and individual level behaviour change interventions. And I've seen a number of strategies and a number of approaches recently where we're actually making a note that we're no longer worrying about individual behaviour change, we're going to do stuff upstream and at systems level. Perfectly valid, but again, I just wanted to, I guess, redress the balance. So, yeah, if you want to change the world, start by changing a life is really my theme today. And not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So yes, we need system change. Yes, we need to address structural determinants and drivers, but we also need to work with individuals downstream. They're both equally important, and system change and individual behaviour change, I think, are very much mutually reinforcing, more so than mutually exclusive. So the key points today, all change, including at systems level, is a result of individual action. We don't get system change unless we see changes in the behaviours and or attitudes of individuals. They reinforce each other. Individuals are part of the system. They're not apart from the system. Positively influencing the lives of individuals has more value than we think. So this is something that I've come to, something that gets me up for work every day. We should seek opportunities to impact lives at all project phases. I'm going to give an example or a couple of examples of how we've done that. But that's something that's deliberatively looking when we're looking to plan, design our programs, what it is that we can do to impact lives through that delivery. And finally, the narrative that individual action cannot deliver change at scale, for me, is at best misleading. At worst, it could be profoundly damaging. Again, this is conjecture. It's for you to think on. None of these are statements of facts. Okay, so this is the social ecological model. I mean, there are various versions of this. This is the one out of UNICEF, C4D, but basically it's an ecological model. And the premise of the model, obviously, is that we see a range of different factors that influence individual behaviour downstream. I guess the reason that I want to flag it here is that I think that it can work both ways, that equally individuals and the behaviour of individuals also influences the system. That's really the key take. I'm not going to dwell on the model any more than that. The only other thing I point out as a card-carrying social marketer, one of the other things I've been at pains to tell people is social marketing is far more than just downstream health comms, and so I've put a very helpful bracket around all of the things that I think fall under the social marketing umbrella for those of you who are perhaps not sure. Diffusion of innovations, again, so this is a theory that has been around since the early 60s, and the reason, again, that I put it here is with the context of the import of individuals and individual attitudes and beliefs being able to influence the system, societal attitudes, political attitudes, so on and so forth. So there's a few things here. First of all, obviously, this is 60 years old, and while relevant, the speed in terms of the diffusion of those innovations and ideas now are vastly quicker than they were back in the 60s. So, the model still holds, but there is so much more potential now for individuals and ideas to spread and diffuse rapidly through society and impact and change systems. The other thing, which many of you may well be aware of, but the classical model would see a tipping point reached at about 51%. We have seen recently a number of studies that the tipping point in terms of uptake of particular attitudes or behaviours is around about 25. So we only need 1 in 4 to really see these ideas spread and take hold. So for me, it's about who we influence downstream, very important. And again, why in social marketing we're so big on segmentation and the power of influence. On the way over on the plane, I was reading an article in Medium, which I thought was really interesting, which was speaking to the speed with which ideas spread. And the thinking there was that they're almost spreading too quickly now, so quickly, that there's no time to actually build the ideas and for the ideas to grow, because they sort of enter into our consciousness and we post on social and away it goes. So I just thought that was a really interesting illustration of the speed, but also, you know, it probably begs the thought about what that means for ideas and sort of building on ideas over time. Okay, 5 minutes. I may go a bit over as well. So no system change happens unless society is ready for it to be introduced. So this is an electric milk truck, for those of you who are wondering. So electric vehicles have been around for around about 200 years. Henry T. Ford actually owned an electric vehicle. He drove an EV of sorts before the Model T went onto the production lines. So the reason, and it's, you know, an example, and obviously there are many other factors at play in terms of EV uptake in Australia, but one of the things for certain sure is that people are now very much more committed to do something about climate change. People want to act in that regard. So there's some, you know, fairly obvious statistics there. So people are now ready for a change. They want to be seen to be doing something, and you're seeing just in the last 12 months EV uptake has doubled between 2022 and 2023. I spoke earlier about sort of some of the other sort of challenges that sit around, I guess, response efficacy in particular. So there was, I suppose, a movement in the past, a very big movement towards individual and personal responsibility, and a lot of this fell out of austerity and governments around the world saying, look, we don't have money to fix these problems. It's a shared responsibility. It's your responsibility downstream to do something at an individual behavioural level. I think I was one of many who pushed back, and I think quite justifiably a number of health and other bodies did so as well. And what the result of that, I think, could be, or at least in part, is that there is now a decline in response efficacy amongst a number of people. So we're not of the view that we can necessarily, if we sort of take a behavioural action, a pro-social, pro-environmental action, that the response efficacy is perhaps down, and you can see some numbers there to that effect. So we need to be mindful of that, not least of which because A, it is a disincentive to people affecting behaviour change, but we also have eco-anxiety growing. And so just a few statistics here. The quote down the bottom, climate change keeps me awake at night. We have a generation of young people who feel that they are powerless to do anything in the face of climate change. So while I think it's important that we talk to the need for companies and government and others to do more, and that it is their responsibility to do something, we also, I think, need to keep singing the sort of praises of individual downstream behaviour change as well, particularly given that in terms of things that see a decline in eco-anxiety, taking action is one of those, and the Headspace report that's flagged there pointed that out. Okay, so actively seek opportunities to impact lives in all phases of delivery. I am conscious of time, but I do want to get through. So we recently did a project last year for the Mental Health Commission in Western Australia around the alcohol think again. We were working with just problem drinkers, so heavy drinkers, and not alcoholics, but people who are drinking very heavily. So we were commissioned to do some formative research, and I think the key thing for us is that we established behavioural assignments, and we did that for two reasons. We did it firstly because we're of the view that setting behavioural assignments can really generate some fascinating and useful insight, but equally it actually affords an opportunity to impact the lives of those people undertaking them. So, and that's exactly what happened. So these are the sort of questions that we asked. We had a couple of iterations of this where people were just self-selected behaviour. They went away, they gave it a go, they recorded what worked, what didn't, what tools and techniques they were able to use to sort of improve their ability, and then we came back and talked it through. The feedback from participants was that they valued the experience and were motivated to continue efforts to reduce and control consumption. So yes, all of the insight generated obviously went to the formation of this particular element of the Alcohol Think Again campaign. But more significantly, I think in some ways, is that we found a mechanism within the study designed to impact lives in a positive way through the delivery of the project. So looking for those opportunities is really important. A Mother Teresa quote, so this really just talks to the impact of what we do lasting over time, but more significantly, I think, that casting the stone, the act of casting the stone, is probably the most important thing here. You need to cast the stone to get the ripples. I'll move through that one, just given time, but I will just very quickly talk about, system change. So the point that I was making earlier, so system change and individual behaviour change being mutually reinforcing, so we can do both. There's room for both. So I've just got back from Zambia a couple of weeks ago. We're doing some really fascinating work with World Vision Australia on farmer-managed natural regeneration. Their program goals are fairly lofty. They're looking to affect the Sustainable Development Goals, restoring 1 billion hectares of land. They're addressing climate change and looking to lift people out of poverty. I've heard some talk about reforesting Africa. If you haven't seen anything on FMNR, I suggest go and having a look at it. It is an absolutely fascinating area and one that I was completely unfamiliar with until just a few months ago. But they've got system-level goals. But they have a very clear downstream behavioural focus. So these 5 elements here are the downstream behaviours they're looking for individual farmers to undertake in order to achieve said upstream objectives. The photo to the bottom left, this one here, is basically a picture of what it is they're looking to put. That's actually a tree. So underground, that has got still the root systems of a full-grown tree that was cleared for farming, and they're basically looking to regrow and revegetate. So to summarise and just to show how the link works, we have upstream the program values of goals of reforestation and climate. So these are big level, big picture change things. But then what we were there doing was running focus groups, going out into communities, talking to farmers, small landholders who own maybe 1 acre, 2 acres of land, and we're trying to see what actually motivates them. And what motivates them, may not surprise you, is not reforesting Africa. It's things like creating additional money for family to send kids to school, maybe just subsistence. A number of people think if they plant trees, more rain will come. And that's a whole other topic that I'll happily take up in the break about their views on climate change. It's really interesting. But suffice to say, addressing those downstream motives allows for the achievement of said upstream goals. So us going in with our values and our objectives is not particularly useful, but nonetheless, if you do the downstream piece, you're going to see over time achievement and attainment of those upstream goals. And there you have a photo. This is in Namibia, and this is the increase in reforestation as a result of this program over, admittedly, 25 years, but this was a case of go in, educate and leave, and then again back to diffusion of innovation, farmers talking amongst themselves and the word spread about the different benefits that this process could achieve, and here we see now a system level change from conversations with individual farmers about what they plant and how they manage their farms. So just wrapping up, so this is the quote that inspired the talk. We cannot do great things in this world. We can only do small things with great love. And again, just as a final reflection and as someone who has beat their head against a wall for more years than I can count, worrying about just about every social and health challenge out there, I think I'm sort of now getting long enough in the teeth to recognise, as I said, that I can't fix everything and we probably can't fix everything, but we can have phenomenal impact just by focusing on changing individual lives. Thank you.